Okay, everybody. This is for the video's sake, putting up the read a lesson 11 and the class files which we're going to see tonight are this, and obviously we're talking about advanced filters. These are filters that take a little bit more time to put together. And stuff. The other reason I'm showing you these filters is because, I cannot show you every single filter that After Effects have. For one thing, it would be boring as heck. The other thing is, they're also very different. The ones I'm showing you tonight and next week are ones that are useful, but also I'm showing them to teach you philosophy. I'm not teaching you what buttons to push. I'm teaching you how to think about filters in After Effects. Now, this particular one, this project called the Magnifying Glass, is designed to combine a lot of things we've already talked about. The parent-childing, we talked about the expressions last week, and also, again, filters by themselves. Like I said, I should have polled you guys for what microphone I should have gone out and buy. Oh, well, I'm stuck with what I got. All right. Now, the first thing is I'm going to obviously import everything in I need. This is going to be my background. A little too small. Bring it up just here. I've got several magnifying glasses here. I think I'll choose this one. Hey there. There we go. Now it's a little too large, so I'm going to shrink it down. Okay, now the idea with this project is we're going to put, there we go. We're going to put some filters inside of the glass area of the magnifying glass and make it act like a magnifying glass. So when we move this thing around, we're going to get actually distortions and stuff inside that space. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, and I'll explain this later, is I could manually move the anchor point to the center of the glass, but I'm actually going to do that using the numbers here just to demonstrate that you can do it. Okay, and then I'll get into why I'm doing it this way. So you'll now see that my anchor point is actually more or less dead center of the where the glass is going to be of my magnifying glass. Now, option number one is I could just put a, simply put a filter onto this layer, but there's a problem with that. So if I go Effects, choose the filter, there we go, Effects, Distort, Magnify, there it is. Here's the problem, is my magnifying is I'm doing it to the artwork. That's not what I want. I don't want to distort this illustration. I want to distort everything else. So that's not the way of doing this. So the way to do this actually is I'm going to go in and add myself an adjustment layer, because remember, all filters must reside on a layer. An adjustment layer is a good way of being able to put a filter onto something. So I'm going to take go back, Effects, Distort, Magnify, and as you can see, now I've got a layer. Oops, the wrong one and stuff. I'm also going to drop, I'm also going to move my adjustment layer between my background and the actual illustration. Now, the reasoning for this, of course, is that I'm going to use and I'm also going to now lock my background so I don't accidentally move it. Now, the reason I'm putting this adjustment layer under here is I can now use the artwork illustration to hide any mistakes, so I don't have to be 100% clean. Now, with the filter, You can see I have a lot of different shapes. This actually gives me a choice between a circle and a square, where the center of it is, how much of a magnification, and all this other information as well. Now, and as you can see that, yes, indeed, I've got a, my magnifying glass is not distorted, but I do have a distortion inside the glass area. So you would think that if I select both layers and move them together, i.e. change their position, because you'll notice that, yes, there are both layers right there. But notice what's happening to my magnifying. It's not moving. Undo, undo, there we go. Why isn't it? This is one of the things that you gotta learn about filters and After Effects. They don't always operate the way that you think they should. This circle option up here in the upper left-hand corner actually allows me to move the distortion where I want it to, which is independent of all things of the layer itself. Also, it's a little bit too big. I'm going to just shrink it down so I'm hiding the edges. Okay, so as dumb as this sounds, this is the thing to learn about some of these filters, is because the center controls where the distortion is, I can grab that adjustment layer and move it around, but it doesn't move the filter itself. The filter is still stuck in position. Bizarre, huh? Now so what I'm going to do now is we're going to use a little bit of that parent-child stuff that we were talking about and link things together. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to make a keyframe for center. And on my magnifying glass, I'm going to also go to position and make a keyframe as well. Now, part of the reason for I'm doing these two things together is because if I hit the letter U, I get both these keyframes there at the same time. And just brings up the information. Now, these keyframes are for different properties. Obviously, this is the adjustment layer with the center information, and this is the position of that layer. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm doing this a little bit out of order from the handout, so you'll have to forgive me, is we're going to use both. I'm going really fast, okay? I'll try to slow down. Did I lose you at any point so far? Like I said, I get really excited. I just start rambling like a crazy person. Okay, but basically all I did was I put down the filter on the adjustment layer. Where did I get the magnifying glass? That is in your handout, but it basically is under effect, distortion, magnify. And if you recall, on the right-hand side, we also have a search. If we typed in on the search, it would bring it up automatically. How did I scale down magnify? Well, curiously enough, there's an option here called size. I just dropped it down. That's all I did with that. Okay. So now, as we know, should remember from past classes, is we have a thing called a parent-child relationship, where we can link layers together by, using the drop-down menu, or alternatively, we can also use the pick whip to link layers together. The pick whip actually allows us to do other things above and beyond that. How did we apply the, okay, stopping right reading this stuff. How did we apply it to get it to the background? We didn't apply it to the background whatsoever. We put the filter onto the adjustment layer. Okay, and that way it's in between. So this adjustment layer does not impact anything above it. It only impacts the information below it. That's what adjustment layers do. Remember, we were doing this back in House at Night stuff. Okay, so backing up here. So we can, with the parent-child relationship, we can link together these two layers. Now, alternatively, we can take this a step further and actually link portions of the layer to each other. Okay? And for that, we use an expression. So, remember, expressions were where we would hit the, come down to the stopwatch. So I'm going to go to the stopwatch of the filter called the center of the filter. I could click it up here, but I'm going to click it down here, down below. Zoom in a little bit. A little too much. Give me a second here. How to line this up. Oops. And now, of course, everything's moving too fast. There we go. So if I hit the Alt key and click on the stopwatch, it decided to move itself. I did not move my mouse. We got in here, which is, that's where we would put in a code. That's where an expression would go in. But alternatively, I don't have to type in an expression here. Notice that under the expression center, I have a pick whip, just like I would do for the parent-child's. All I have to do is grab this pick whip and tie it to position. Now the expression has made itself. And over on the right-hand side here, it quite simply says, this comp, i.e. where we're at, the layer itself is now tied, so that the center of the filter is now tied to the position. So in other words, the filter way up here at the top, the center position, is now tied to where the position number is down here. And as I move over, you can see this layer is tied to the magnifying glass layer way up there, and we are tied specifically to the transform position. Why does it say transform position? Well, of course, if we open everything up, transform position. So what does this mean? With having these guys now tied together, positioned to the center point, if I move this layer, the center of the filter, which remember wasn't moving when I moved the other layer, now moves. So now when I move this around, you can see the distortion happening as I go. But the secret is quite simply the ability to tie together one small section of this filter. I'm not doing everything. I haven't tied together the entire thing, but the filter has a center command. Okay, this is what tracks where the filter is happening. And basically I just said, this is now tied to where the position is. So when I move the position of this layer, it automatically changes the center. Notice that the numbers are identical. So as I move this one, it moves the other one. Left, right, up, down. Or I can just manually move it around. It doesn't update though until I let go. So if we were to, the question was, if we were to rotate this, the center doesn't change because it's only tied to the position. This is why at the very beginning of this, if you recall, I made sure that my anchor point was in the center of my magnifying glass. Now I'm going to do this again. Back to the center more or less. Got the effect. Okay, the question was, I got the effect to move with the magnifying glass with the pick whip, good. But how do I line up the glass circle with the effect? Well, basically, because what I did was at the very, very beginning, if you recall, I did the anchor point of the magnifying glass layer and made sure that it was actually in the middle of the screen to start with. And that saved me a world of time and energy. Oops. Gotta be careful which one you move. I don't know why it doesn't show this compass works. So then you did it right. If it works, that's knowledge enough to know that it does work. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing again, only this time I'm going to do a different filter. I'm also going to use effects, because remember, you can use more than one. And I'm going to choose Bulge. Distort. Way at the top, Bulge. Now, Bulge here is very, very similar to Magnify. There's its little circle, its center point. Now, it, on the other hand, is not big enough, and it does something different than the other one. The other one had a thing called, this is where the bulge center is, obviously, but to make this bulge bigger, it actually breaks up the horizontal and the vertical. The other one just had size. Now, again, the reason I'm showing this is to show you the concepts behind. You can tell that these two filters were not written by the same person. One person did size, which is X and Y at the same time, and then somebody else did, this other filter said, no, I'm going to break that up into two parts to give you more options. So it makes it kind of crazy in that respect. So I'll increase the radius and I'll increase the vertical. And again, I'm using the edge of the artwork to hide the fact that, the edge of that filter. So they don't have to be perfectly lined up. Covering things up is perfectly acceptable. Okay. Now, once again, I got to do that pick whip thing. So with the position ready down here, I go back to my adjustment layer. And I'm going to actually, remember, this is the bulge center that I care about. Make sure that's highlighted. I'm going to put the stopwatch and one keyframe activated. Again, the reason I do that is so I can actually have all the information showing down here. I don't have to keep going back here. Technically speaking, by the way, you can use the pick whips to tie all the way up here. It does work, but it's easy to hit the wrong thing. So it's just so much faster and easier to come down here and to do the work. That's why I made the one keyframe to create the motion. So I need to get into the expression. So I hold down my Alt key, hit the stopwatch. It opens up the bulge effect right there. But I want that tied to the position again. So I just come up here, tie it to the position, not the entire layer, just the position itself. And it, like I said, writes all the code for me. There it all is. Once I click away, it says, okay, you're done. I get no error messages. There's my text. And you can see now that both those filter centers are tied to the exact same point in time of my magnifying glass. So now when I move my magnifying glass around, you can sort of see the bulging effect over that keyboard really nicely. If I don't like that bulge, change it. I can still change the rest of these numbers. Just because they're linked together, it doesn't change anything. I mean, I can make the bulge bigger, less shallow, depending upon what I want, etc. And I could still even make it wider. Again, I've only tied together where the center point is with the actual physical center point of the magnifying. Oops. And that's me moving the entire layer, which is something I didn't want to do. So just one of those cute little things. I just want you to think differently about filters with this. The idea behind this is, is this a very practical effect? Not really. But on the other hand, it shows you how you can tie sections of a layer with sections of a filter or sections with layers to layers. The parent-child relationship is vastly more complex than most people think it is. Most people are just used to tying together one layer to another layer so they all move together. But by doing it, this is a good example of how you tie together part of a filter with a part of a layer. So one impacts the other. It can save you a whole host of time and energy. Again, I'm moving the wrong layer again. And stuff. So there you go. A silly little thing. My handout does cover this step by step. Gives you an idea of what you can do with it, etc. Okay? So some of you are following along. Some of you, obviously, your computers can't handle following along with, watching me at the same time. That's the disadvantage of doing this remotely and online. So, questions?
I'm really confused how to set the anchor point of the magnifying glass.
Well, if I were to just delete everything, what the heck? Actually, I don't need to delete everything. I'll just delete the magnifying glass. Yeah, right. I delete the magnifying glass and it goes, dude, that expression no longer works. Yeah, such is life. Go get the magnifying glass again. Magnifying glass was too big, so I shrink it down. Now the anchor point is tied to the center of the layer itself, right? So all I did was literally, now I could have used the pan behind tool and move it right there. But I was trying to be a little more showy this time and demonstrate that by bringing up the anchor point option down below on the timeline, they can just as easily move this it's just all X and Y. I knew the filters would actually place the in dead center of the entire layer. So I just put my magnifying glass and did this before all the other steps. That's all. Like I said, I could have, like I said, use this pan behind tool.
So when I move the effect, or when I use the pick whip, am I attaching it to the magnifying glass anchor point or the magnifying glass position?
Position.
Okay.
The anchor point is part of the entire layer. Okay, because this magnifying glass, the glass portion of it was not dead center. If we were to just double click on this, obviously the center of this graphic is somewhere in here, right? So if I were to tie together the center position, my filter would be in the center here. So I had to use the anchor point and move it around to get it to where I wanted to in here. So basically I'm lying to the computer. Rather than being in this quote unquote center of the layer, I'm moving the anchor point around to make it the center of the glass. Okay? And the neat thing about this, tying these things together, is because remember the code says this layer is tied to transform position. The moment I dropped this back in, I didn't have to retie it together because it's still looking way up here and my filters still work. So I didn't have to repick whip it again. Okay. Does it make sense to everybody? Again, I'm just trying to show you more options and how complex this stuff can get. By tying together certain portions of, such as position or centering or things like that, to sub portions of your layers, you can get the After Effects to do a lot of the work for you. You know, and when we get into tracking things, of getting the computer to parse out where things are on the screen for us automatically, you know, you'll see some of this come back to again, because it's all tied together. Okay, any other questions? I don't see anybody coming up on their mic, and I don't see any text coming up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is 8:15, no, 10 of actually, my bad. Okay, are we ready for a 15-minute break? More pizza. Okay, I hope you brought enough for everybody. Okay, we're going to, after the break, we're going to leave this and do another different filter. But no break for you, Max? You want to keep working on it? Go for it. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, everybody in class, if you could all give me a here, present, whatever, yo, into the chat screen. Yo, there you go. Okay. Again, I recommend downloading the handouts that I have for this and trying to work your way through it. What I did on the screen was a little bit, not in the same order I did in the handout, but you get the idea. But it does cover all the information. And hopefully that will help you come together. Is it important to know expressions? The answer is, you know, you can get through using After Effects without expressions. But it's nice to know that that option is there. Okay, we're going to shift gears here, and we're going to do a different filter altogether. We're going to use a filter called Shatter. And yes, there is a handout called Advanced Shatter. That's not what I wanted to move. There we go. Now this one, we're going to do something fairly complex in the sense of not just the basic filter. We're going to be using several different compositions and doing a composition inside of a composition here. Now, before we can begin, and this is in the handout, there's a series of steps which allow us to make all the comps first and then pull them together afterwards. So, I'm going to stop the little magnifying glass from doing its thing. First composition, new composition. Now, it's important to name your compositions, particularly more complicated things you have, so you can tell these things apart. I'm going to call this one ramp. And I'll explain why in a little bit. NTCSDV, 10 seconds. Yeah, that's all good stuff. Boom. Blank composition. I'm going to put a solid on here so I can actually have my filter go on top of something. I don't want to do an adjustment layer because I don't want it to impact. Remember, adjustment layers impact all the layers below it. If I put a filter onto a solid layer, it doesn't impact anything other than that layer. I don't care what color this is because for the simple reason, Synagon, this filter is going to wipe out that color. The reason I'm calling this composition ramp is because the filter I'm going to put on here is called gradient ramp. Up until recently, this filter was always called ramp. They actually didn't have the word gradient in it, which left a lot of people confused. It wasn't until the last couple of years. So you can get it by searching for it, or you can just go up and get my handout, has this as well. Okay. So we would go Effects, click on the layer, Eric, there we go, yeah. Effects, generate, move out, generation, generate, and there's gradient ramp. And as you can see, it literally made a gradient, and there's all these wonderful options to change the gradient. I'm going to leave this black and white for the moment and leave it alone. I'll come back to these options a little bit later. I'm just building basically my actors, my different comps. So just give me a second to do, go through this. So my next comp is I'm going to make a layer for my composition, new composition. I'm going to call this one text. Same size and everything, that's fine. Now for this, I need to have 2 lines of text. So I'm just going to put in my name. I'm going to center that, obviously. I want it reasonably good size. So I'm going to just play with it here. Don't like that, them touching each other that way. Let's play with the kerning, leading, excuse me. Kerning is when you space between letters, leadings between lines. There we go. And I don't like the outline either for what we're doing tonight. So I'm going to click on outline, hit the no effect. And I am going to go in here and make a much big, bold, bright color for us. Okay, so this is then my next composition. So I have a gradient and I've got my big, bold text. And again, it's important in this case to have 2 lines for the stunt we're about to do. Okay, then finally I'm going to create the stage where I'm going to put this in. Again, I could call this anything, but it's an old habit of mine, is I'm moving all the comps onto the stage. So I'm going to go stage, okay. The first thing I'm going to do is, and this is why naming these things is handy, go ahead and grab my text comp and put it there. I will come back to the ramp in just a second. And the next filter I want to use is the one called Shatter. This is the one that is going to do the heavy lifting, do most of the work. So I make sure that composition is chosen. I go Effects, and it's under Simulation. And there, it's called Shatter. Now, watch my screen for a second here, everybody, because you're about to see something happen. Boom. My text just vanished. Oh my goodness gracious, what just happened? Actually, this is actually at the stage, if you follow step by step my instruction. Yeah, there's a big bold. Your text will vanish. Do not panic. Okay. Again, I'm using this filter because it does a lot of things that you'll see in other filters. Notice that I now have this outline stuff. Well, that's because this particular filter has a thing called View, and it actually gives me different options. The wireframe forces just a wireframe. The 2 I'm really more concerned about is the top and bottom one. Render allows me to see what the thing looks like. Wireframe forces show me all these other options below here in lower res. Okay. Now, for example, if I were to go to render, hit play, this is what the filter does. Boom. Well, yep, Shatter lives up to its name, doesn't it? It literally shatters that. Also notice that there are some pieces still that were not shattered. We'll come back to that one in a second. Now, the reason why I put this filter here is because if I want to make changes, I can go back to the original text comp and I can play with this here, make adjustments, like say, I want to make that lowercase. And it has no effect on the actual shattering effect because I've separated them separating it through the comp. Now, before I get into the fancy stuff, etc., let me explain what's going on. And for that, I need to go back to the wireframe and forces. Well, I happen to have a brick wall here, and this is what it looks like when you hit Shatter. You can actually see the brick wall go boom. The best description of that circle, by the way, is you have to imagine a ball on the other side of the brick wall. And I am going to literally push it through the brick wall. So that ball starts by hitting this small section and is pushed out. More and more of the ball goes through, completely wiping it out. Notice though that it is smaller than my composition. Therefore, anything outside of the circle will stay on the screen, which is why I've got these little bits hanging there. Okay. Now the other reason that we have this wireframe and forces view of things is this is a very memory heavy filter. This thing will eat your memory alive. So by having it in wireframe mode, we can do a lot of the adjustments without eating so much into our memory. It's a lot faster. Okay, let's talk about our various options and stuff. Go away. Okay. So to begin with, in the upper left-hand corner, we have, of course, the view, which we just discussed, and we can also change the quality of the renderers and stuff. This doesn't really change the output as much, but just leave that alone. Then we have a section below here called shape. This actually impacts what we would call this brick. The first thing up here is called bricks, you know, the pattern. I could change that to bricks, to carpenter's wheel, chevrons, crescents, eggs. I know that's a weird one. Glass, various herringbone patterns. Oops, missed. You know, there's a lot of choices. One of my favorite ones, of course, is puzzle pieces. Literally does puzzle pieces. You can see there's the little puzzle pieces being broken apart.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What is, so you go to effect and then where do I go to find shatter?
Effect, simulation,
Simulation. Okay.
shatter. Yeah, if you have the handout out, it's listed there step by step.
Okay, thank you.
Just FYI. Yeah, if you guys were in class, by the way, I would have had this printed out. You'd have it in front of you. This is where the challenge gets to do this online. So anyhow, this what I'm doing right now is just going through all the options. That's not on the handout. So just bear with me. So let me go back to the wireframes for a second here. And I'm going to go to, say, glass. No, it was eggs. I'm going to go to one below, glass. Okay, this is shattering things like glass. This is a very popular one we'll be using a little bit later. Now, besides that, we have several different options as well. One of the things is called repetitions. The more repetitions you have, it repeats that shattering to the point at which it makes smaller and smaller pieces, as you can see. But if you increase the repetitions, this eats up a lot more memory because the computer now has to track, rather than 100 pieces, 1,000 pieces and stuff. But it does act. As you can see, it's really impressive when it does work. Get that back to where it was. You can also change, actually, let's go back to wireframe, speed things up. You can also change where the center, right now the center point, which of course, like I said, all these filters were written by other people. The center point is not called center point in this filter, it's called the origin point. So if you don't want the shatter to happen in the center, you can also move it to other points in the thing. So this is, even though it's called the origin, it just means it's the bloody center point of where the shatter is happening. And extrusion depth is how thick are these pieces, because you can make them look like chunks of concrete and stuff. By the way, your best friend on this filter is hitting the reset button. So anyhow, so my options under shape are what pattern the shapes are going to become, you know, how small pieces I want. I can choose what direction they're going to start going, things like that, and where the origin point and how thick they are. I'm going to leave the defaults, except for the glass here. Below shape is a thing called force. Force is what it sounds is the circle. Okay, this literally represents that ball coming through, in this case, the glass. Okay, this is how we can actually control also when the break happens. Because if I set it, notice that the depth of it is automatically set to 10. So we hit play, it automatically shatters. If I set the depth to 0, the ball can't come through. It's not, now it is. Of course it wants to make me a liar. Fun stuff. It always will not work when you're trying to do things properly. But the depth is a way of controlling the ball. As you can see, I'm moving the ball back. It's too far away to actually go through the system. So actually my depth, I was just typing in the information the wrong way. Oops. Radius is obviously how big that ball is. If I do want to wipe out all the text on the screen, all I have to do is increase the radius. So it literally takes everything out with it. And strength, of course, is what it sounds like, is the physical force of how fast this is coming through. So if strength is high, it will shatter the pieces really fast, boom. Because that ball is being shot out like a bullet. If this is really small, like say 1, the bricks just literally fall down. Let's look at that as a render. Because there's no force behind the push. Okay? Okay, so shape controls how the things break apart, and force 1 is literally the ball itself coming through, smashing. Okay? Is that going at a better speed, everyone? Is that working for you? I see 1 yes. Okay. Now, as crazy as this is, they actually do have a force number 2. You can have 2 explosions in this thing. Don't do this unless you know what you're doing. Okay, this can just drive you nuts. I already tell most students just ignore force number 2. Okay, because what will happen, of course, let me shrink down my, I can just go to, oops, wrong thing. Then increase my, so now I have 2 circles now, force 1, because this radius was at 0, therefore it doesn't. What happens with that? Boom. So it's kind of silly. So we're going to ignore force number 2 and stick with force number 1. Okay. Now below that is a thing called gradient. Notice that we made a gradient earlier. I'm going to skip over this for the minute and come back to it in a little bit. Below that is a thing called physics. This literally is a powerful area of this filter. You'll see physics under a lot of other filters as well. If you think about it, if you just read off the names of these things, it makes a lot of them totally make sense. Rotation speed, how much of those little pieces when they blow apart tumble away? How do you want them to tumble? You know, which direction, X, Y, Z. Free is literally a randomization. And there's a randomizer below, which takes the thing. Viscosity is how thick is the air. So are you doing a shatter in air or through water? Just to give you an idea, this is a regular shatter. Okay, pretty straightforward. Let me increase the viscosity. Oh, it's going to be one of those nights where I just can't say one word. And you can see by increasing that so much, it started shattering, and then it hit like basically gel, and it's just slowly oozing through. If you think about it, the force of strength and viscosity, I'll get it eventually, are opposites of each other. So I can increase the strength to cancel this out or vice versa. So you do want to be a little bit more, you know, careful in that, because if you increase one and don't increase the other, you may not get the results that you want. Okay. Then of course, there's also gravity. Okay, gravity is what it sounds like. Right now, this is 3 points of gravity. But if I increase this, the pieces will then tend to fall all down because gravity is much higher. See how they sort of drop down? I can also do negative gravity, I believe. Or did they change that? No. A while back, you could do that. Now they have instead gravity direction. Oh, by the way, with zero gravity, it just means everything's coming right at the camera, straight ahead. But with gravity, if I increase gravity, let's go up to 5 so we can actually see what we're doing. So normally, you can see how the pieces are falling down that way. Gravity direction is at 180 degrees, you know, 0, 90, 180. So if I set that to 0, guess which way the stuff goes? See how they're falling up instead? So there we go. So that's the gravity and gravity direction. Inflection is, again, just a point. By the way, have you noticed that everything here is keyframeable? meaning I can animate all these things. So for example, I could technically make the gravity so they start to fall up. I can make them go in any direction that I wanted to, and keyframe that, etc. Okay. So again, in a lot of other filters, you're going to see the physics option with most of these same things. A lot of really cool stuff there. Texture is a more advanced thing, you know, which allows you to alter the look and feel of the stuff. It's fairly advanced. I don't have the time to get into that tonight. And finally, we have with camera position. This is not the same thing as, it's a pseudo camera. You have to be careful using this if you're in a 3D position using, you know, a real camera, because you can cancel things out. But the neat thing about this is you can, even in a 2D world, create this pseudo 3D. So for example, if I rotate this, hey, there's that ball I was talking about. Now you don't get it animated going through, but you can see what's happening. So I'm going to turn this just a little bit of angle here. Go back into render. Oh, that was probably the wrong. I want to go the other direction. There we go. That's better. So it does create a pseudo 3D look and feel and stuff. So you can play with all the various camera positions. It has all X, Y, Z, move things up, play with it. You can actually do an honest to God rotation with this and not rotate the layer. You can move things forward and backwards too through Z space. A lot of fun options there. Reset. Okay, and the final two are, of course, playing with the lighting and material options of making what's on there look like different textures and stuff. I don't tend to use this very frequently. Just to let you know, because I normally use the material options down below when we get into that in 3D worlds and stuff. Okay, so those are the options you have to play with. The shape of which things break apart, the force upon which, you know, is being pressed upon those letters, and then finally, the physics involved in this. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Have I raced too far ahead? Or am I good to go? Okay, I see good to goes. All right, so this is going to bring me back to my handout. Well, we just covered setting up and making the gradient, making the text layer, building the stage and putting the shatter effect on it is the front half of the page. Now I'm going to flip to the back and do a stunt, as it were. I'm going to put all this information together to do something that's kind of cool. And you can follow this along step by step if you want to download the PDF and look at it. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is go into my shapes. And this is where I want to make my things glass, because I want to break this into itty bitty small pictures. Okay, and at repetitions, I'm going to make this 50. I could go bigger. Now I can't see them because obviously I'm not in wireframe. But you can see I'm making lots of small pieces here. Okay. Now I'm going to then, actually, the thing in class I always recommend is to, once you've done any of these steps, is to go ahead and hit play just for the fun of it to see what it looks like. That's one of the reasons why this handout takes almost the entire evening. But you can see how long it took that to render. So now that I have a green line, I can actually hit play and see what it would look like speed-wise. Okay, now once I've got that the way I like it, I'm going to go into the forces here. First things first is I want to increase the radius. Okay, going to increase the radius. My recommendation is 0.65. That should cover the entire screen, or at least all my text. Yep, sure does. And then under strength, I'm actually going to drop that way down to 0.05. Not a lot of force going on there. So I'm going to go back to render. Because the force is very weak, you can see it shattering, and it's just literally going plop, plop down. Not all that exciting, right? Very, very true. But, aha, we're going to do something else. Remember that gradient I made way back? I'm going to find that comp that I made, the ramp. I should have labeled it gradient, but remember I told you the filter used to be called ramp. Some old school. And you can see that, yes, indeed, there is my gradient as a comp right there. Now, the interesting thing about this is I don't really need to see this comp for me to pull it into the other comp. I can literally hide this from view. So I just hit the little eyeball so the audience will not see this. Go back to the other comp, go back into my effects. Remember that option called gradient? Okay, I'm going to now take this and it says, it's asking literally a question, where is the gradient layer? Right now it's set to none, but I'm going to say, hey, find the gradient on this other composition, i.e. the other layer. Now, again, this is one of those tricky things, and I do point this out in my handout, is the moment that I have activated the gradient, if I hit play, the strength no longer goes through or causes the thing to crash. It just sits there like a crazy person. That's because the shatter threshold takes over and decides to when and how this thing crashes apart. So I'm going to go over about a second or so here. I'm going to hit a keyframe because right now my shatter threshold's at 0%. Then I'm going to go over to about 3 seconds and increase that to 100%. You also notice even though I hit 100%, there's still something on my screen. That's because you remember the pieces are still flying separately and they may stay on screen longer. Okay, so here's what the stunt is. I'm going to hit play. So what just happened? Okay, basically what's happening is before I put in the gradient, remember the whole thing just cracked and then fell down. Well, basically here's the nifty thing about gradients is inside the shatter filter, it's reading from white to black. So the shatter filter starts in the 100% white area and proceeds to the 100% black area, shattering this a little at a time. So it's literally creating animation over my keyframes. And because my force, my strength, is very, very small, they just literally crumble into pieces. So for example, if I were to say actually increase the number of repetitions, let's go up to like 90. That's a lot. This is going to slow us down a lot. These would become very, very small pieces even more. And you can see it slowly, slowly shattering into its little itty bitty pieces. Now, if I go back to my ramp gradient, because it's reading the black and white information, I can actually change this. I can say, no, I want it to be a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to move, basically in this filter, going over it real fast, there's a start point, which is actually 100% black, and that's this guy here. I'm moving it to the upper right-hand corner, and the end point, which is 100% white, I'm putting it in this corner. So I go back to my stage. Guess what happens now? You can see it starts here. It's going all the way across there. A lot of people just put shatter onto something and they never look at any of these options, but you can start to see how powerful this is. Let's go back and look at, now we're going to look at green line real time. Now if we were to increase the force, the strength a little bit, let's make it 0.8. Gives it a little bit more. That gives you an idea. Crumbling. The lost letters, as it were. Okay. Now, of course, if I went back to the gradient here, I also have, besides a linear ramp, I could go to the center. So what did I just say? It goes from what? 100% white to 100% black. So what is it going to look like now? So it crumbles from the outer edge and goes into the center. And because I'm using gravity and a small force, they're just, you know, slowly falling down on top of each other. Of course, I could also do the opposite. Grab the black. Yeah, I get different ways of doing this, of course, you know. Too much fun. Reset. If I want to do radiant, I gotta go the other direction. There we go. Okay, so it goes, now it's going from white to black, right? There we go. Back to my stage. Now it should go from the center out. So what do you guys think? Interesting stuff, isn't it? Shrink my timeline just here. Now in real time. The other thing that you should realize is I don't have to use a filter for this at all, by the way. Is technically speaking, I could create a gradient, any gradient in the Photoshop or other pieces of software. I could do a gradient of some, you know, like a silhouette of somebody's head or something, you know, and blow it out that way. You know, it doesn't have to be just this straight left to right or right to left. And also, if you play with the 100% white to 100% black to get you more shades of gray or lack of shades of gray, you can get all sorts of different feels for it. But basically, the shatter filter, most people use it for like shattering glass or creating bullet holes or things like that. But you can also use it, as you can see, to create the effect of literally, you know, something turning into dust. We're using text, obviously, just for, you know, speed, but it will shatter other things as well. Now, for example, I went to my text layer, grab a, say, a photograph. Hello. Way too big. Shrink that down a little bit. Now this has a lot more pixels in it, but you can give you the idea. It's going to take a few minutes. But you can see how the gradient's going from the bottom to the tops.
Is there a way to do these animations in reverse to like bring an image into the screen?
Yes, but there's extra steps involved. Basically, what you would have to do is do a reverse time mapping, which is a different, it's not the filter. Okay, let me back up there. The filter itself doesn't do that, okay? What you would have to do instead is have all this working as a composition and then basically use another filter to tell it to run backwards. Okay?
So I'd have to save it as a composition and then bring it back in and play it
Yeah,
back.
there's multiple options there. It's not a single one.
Okay.
But the answer is, yeah, it can be done. We do it all the time.
Okay.
Do you remember last week when I was talking about the, you know, how you control the speed of things? There's a way of reversing the frames of the video. But you want to, 9 times out of 10, you always want a separate comp. That way you're not impacting the rest, because if you actually reverse the entire timeline, you might be reversing it the wrong way. Does that make sense? You know, if I had 25 layers here, it's hard to isolate it just to one part. Or I would say it can be done professionally, but I just find it easier to, you know, pre-comp everything and just let it run its own little world separately from everything else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, like I said, we use the compositions to isolate, you know, group things together and isolate them. It just makes our lives a lot easier. Just the same way that that's why I made 3 different comps here, because I can make quick changes to the text comp and not impact anything else. So for example, I've got this little itty bitty this little short firefighting thing. But you can see that's doing this. Now think of the rendering here. It's actually rendering an animation inside of each one of these little pieces. That's how crazy this can become. And that was the end of the video because it was only 3 seconds long. But in real time, now, of course, if you start thinking about putting this all together, you can get all sorts of nifty effects. This is, like I said, in the real class, I'd be sitting here going, okay, play with it. Because, you know, of course, you know, you can sit here and do just playing with the physics alone to give you different, you know, looks and feels. But we can also do things like, you know, let's see. Now, right now, that doesn't look very impressive. Oops. But say, for example, I go into forces then, not forces, excuse me, physics. For this action, I'm going to need a lot more strength. Yeah, camera-wise, that's probably too jarring. The moment I start adding more strength, of course, obviously the pieces fly apart even faster. To the point at which that's a little too fast for my taste. A lot of this is a little bit of guesswork. You know, you sit there and go, what looks good? You know, and you would sit there and play with it, like put it about midway there and go, okay, you know, which way do I want my pieces to go? How do I want the forces to act on each other? Do I want to slow them down by increasing the playing between the strength? If I cast, boy, you'll have to forgive me, guys. Gives me a different playing. It's also like, do I like that gravity direction or do I want it to go up? Not fast enough. The other thing to keep in mind is because it's keyframeable, I could then speed everything back up again. You know, by having it start off slow and then just let it rip. The other thing that's quite frequently done, camera angle. This is one of those times where you always wish that they had the a reset for just a subsection of this. But for example, okay, we got this falling apart this way. Let's do a 3. Okay, so say 25 gravity. So you can see how that. Now that gives us a really neat effect. But by duplicating this composition, I can actually have multiple explosions happening. So for example, now that I've got that one, I can change, make another one with more. What's the max nowadays? Now 200 is the max. I just keep playing with it to mix these things together. To give me a different look and feel. This is going to be a horrendous render, comparatively speaking. But see how much because I have double layers going, it gives me more variety of sizes and also generates even more bits. So it's even looking like smaller and smaller pieces than before. It gives me a lot of variety that way. So what do you guys think? Questions? Did I put you to sleep? Just thinking about it. Yeah, this is one of those ones you're just going to have to play with, honestly. You can spend hours just playing with the physics portion of this. What I've seen students do is they put like text onto an edge of a book and then made it shatter in such a way that it looked like it was flying away, you know, in the wind and stuff. You can do, you know, use this, we use this one a lot. But again, I do have to warn you in the sense of this is going to slow down your computer to no end. It is a massive memory hog. But the other reason, like I said, I was showing this to you is to show you all the variations. And a lot of the things that you see here, you'll see in other filters as well. Once you get the names of these, the meanings of gravity and other things put together, you'll see that and go, oh, wait, I remember that from another filter. The other thing that I wanted to show, there we go. That was actually pretty good. Let's watch this in real time now. Comes at the camera and then blows away, going the other direction. Anyhow, the other thing, of course, I wanted to recognize, which is a very common thing for some of these really advanced filters, is the ability to pull in information from another layer. Okay. This does not have to, you know, this gradient does not have to be on the screen. Okay. It just has to be in the same composition with the eyeball turned off and it works just fine. This is what the audience is going to see. There we go. If I go back into, again, the reason why I chose the text layer is by simply making one change, i.e. to this layer. Let's see if I can get this. It's a little too small. There we go. Go back to the stage. Automatically changes, and all my settings are still there. And the reason why the lettering's red and the explosion's red is because, well, they are, that's where the text color is. If I change the text color, we get a different color. This is a little more Valentine's or anti-Valentine's Day-ish. But you can see how it's grinding on that render, just taking forever to do each one of those things. Imagine this with more layers on top of it, because I got a few thousand particles going around. And off into the background it goes. You guys tracking that render time? This is why I always warn you, don't wait to the last minute to do your projects. Because this sort of thing, you add in one filter, it's suddenly like, oh my God, goodness, this is going to take an extra half an hour to render, to output it. There we go, just about at the beginning, green line. You know, I have some suggestions on my handout for you to try, you know, different gravity settings and gravity directions and playing with the strength and stuff. But nothing beats playing with this one. Okay, even if you don't do the gradient portion of it, you know, it's still, so for example, if I were to choose one of these layers and turn off the gradient, set it back to none, that would really change the way things look. Come on, play. Okay, play that. Oh, there we go. Because what would happen is it would start to shatter in one direction. Okay, boy. As a matter of fact, that may be too intense for even my computer. Too many different particles. Wow. Yeah, so the first one, because the gradient's off, would blow it away. And then the second one would do the gradient, would get there. Actually, that doesn't look so hot. There we go. So those are some things off the top of my head. Like I said, we tend to have a lot of fun when we're in class, just playing with this one, just letting you guys have at it. We'll often actually stand up and walk around, look what everyone else is doing, because there's just way too many possibilities. Okay, questions. Like I said, I'm racing ahead. Don't want to get too fast, too far. I've stunned you all into silence. Or are you all playing with it on your own computers? Got several people going, yep, yep, yep. You know. Just saying, I've not experimented a lot with the shared screen stuff. Okay. All right, everybody. You guys are all furiously obviously thinking about this one. So we got the two handouts. Please download them, play with them. You've got the files, have some fun and stuff. Okay. I think you'll probably enjoy the Shatter one more so than the Magnifying Glass one, but basically, again, the Magnifying Glass was just to show the possibilities of how to tie layers, or I should say portions of compositions together, not just, you know, the layers themselves, but also everything else. The Shatter, on the other hand, again, you can just use the plain Shatter. You don't need the ramp. But again, it was just trying to demonstrate, you know, multiple things with all these handouts and things I'm showing you. So hopefully when you get to another filter that I've not covered in class, you will go, wait a second, this looks a lot like the other filter, or it has the same wording as the other filter. Or in the case of, as I demonstrated, this, where, you know, they cannot standardize the word center point. You know, they keep changing that. Every single filter seems to have a different name for that. So you do need to be aware of that. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I got one more very, very fast thing to show you. If there's no more questions on Shatter. Something I kind of wanted to do last week, but I ran out of time. Okay. Everybody ready to change subjects real fast? This is not all that hard, so just bear with me for a second. Okay, I'm saying yeps, lots of yeps, yeps, yeps. Do you recall last week we were talking about alpha channels? Well, we're back again. Alpha channels can be used for many things. Transparency for one of them, because obviously, you know, this has a, when I use text, it automatically makes it transparent for me. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there we go. There's my text, and I happen to have a piece of video playing behind it. It's not very fancy. I think I'm actually going to move this. This will be more impressive up in the clouds up here. Okay. Now, what if I wanted to put those clouds in this video inside the lettering? Okay. Well, there's an easy way of doing this. And it's very, very similar to the concept of the blend modes, if you remember those from Photoshop. And it also uses the alpha channel information we've already discussed. Okay, I'm going to do a little zoom in here. I'm going to try to see this. At the very, very bottom of my screen, there's a button called Toggle Switches / Modes. And when I do this, it changes my information up above because there is just so much information in After Effects, I can't put it all in one spot. So I lose my 3D and all these other options up here. So when I hit Toggle Modes, I get them. And from here, I get all the blend modes that you should be used to in After Effects. Okay. Now in the video down below, this is going to be weird, but for me to put this video inside the text, you need the video underneath the text. Okay. And below here, next to the blend modes, we have a section here, and there's a thing called Alpha Matte and Luma Mattes. Basically what we're doing here is taking this video layer and saying, look at the layer above you. If there's an alpha channel, grab it. And when I do that, this is what happens. It puts the video inside the lettering. And that's how simple it was. If there's no alpha information, you can also use the Luma. Notice that this is grayed out. Luma uses the black and white information, the Luma channel, brightness versus darkness. So if I had black and white text but no alpha channel, I could fill it this way. By the way, inverted is exactly what it sounds like. It punches out the letters and does that. The interesting thing about this, of course, is if I were to grab something, put it underneath there. In fact, actually, that's not as impressive. Where is the, here we go. So basically, with the inverted alpha, I've got video looking at the layer above it, saying, is there a alpha channel? If I use regular alpha, it says yes. Then that video goes inside of the alpha channel. You'll also notice you get new little icons down here showing that these guys are tied together. This is just my background, by the way, of the fish flying through. Shrink this down a few seconds because they're not that long. Well, actually, they're pretty long video clips, so we're good. Now, when I choose the invert alpha channel, obviously it's reading the alpha channel in the reverse manner. punching a hole out, basically making a stencil, leaving my video up, but leaving a hollowed area. So anything below these two things can be seen through it. Hence this video of the fish can be placed inside the lettering. It doesn't have to be video, by the way. It can be, of course, still images as well. You can animate it and do all the other fun things. You can do everything you would do normally on a regular layer. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with this, and let me go back to the regular alpha channel, is if I move the text, it actually, let's see. I had both layers selected, hence I had the issue. But now you can see that different parts of the video, because I'm basically, if I place it up at the top where the clouds are, you can see the clouds. Down below, you can see the mountains, and in between, you can see the horizon. So literally, it's punching out a hole wherever I put the thing, which allows you to see it. The other thing is, you'll notice on down below, is it technically turns off the text eyeball, because it's grabbing it and linking these two layers together. Of course, if I were to bring up my background, you would see the clouds in the lettering flowing. Okay, a lot of people get confused with the background just because, well, it's there, but actually the background has absolutely nothing to do with the linking these two guys again, doing an alpha channel. By the way, the term of this you'll see in other pieces of software is up here, track matte. Perhaps the worst name of a option is a problem, because whenever somebody sees the word track matte, they think it has to do with motion and movement and stuff like that, but it has absolutely nothing to do with moving. Now I could, of course, oh, sorry about that, guys. I could animate my text. I mean, I could sit here, just a simple P for position, start there, come over 6 seconds, move up. And you can see the clouds still moving through those lettering, of course. And if I add my background, exact same thing. Yes, you can put filters on this. So if I wanted to blur something, just something off the top of my head. Actually, that turned out pretty good. Gives it a very weird wire-like quality, doesn't it? That was sort of random, by the way. And if I were to animate that, I could probably get it to make it look, oh, I know. No, that's a little too complex for what I'm trying to do here. There we go. Wave warp. Actually, for that, I think the text should actually be going the other direction, don't you? Start it at the top. It should look like it's drowning. So you can see everything all works together. Everything comes together into its, by adding one layer, one little bit on top of each other. It doesn't take much. Also, it doesn't take much experimentation, in the sense of, Again, the search feature for effects, or you can just literally go to effects and just start reading these things off. Start at the top, work your way down and go, what does this mean? You know, these things also have certain meanings. I mean, like lens flare, that should be pretty straightforward. Eclipse circles. Now, keying and matting we'll get to a little bit later, but you know, perspectives, simulations gives us all those bubbles and you know, snowfall and rainfall and things like that. Different stylized gives us really, you know, glowing, etc. Various text effects and things like that. You know, like I said, I don't have time to cover every single filter, so I'm teaching you basically basic concepts in the sense of how do you mix this stuff together. And sometimes you get lucky accidents like I just did here, where you just, you know, keep playing with it until you get something different. And it was a good suggestion there, by the way, to drop a filter on there to give a different look and feel to the whole thing. And if I had something other than the mountains and clouds going by, you know, again, the lettering would look different. Of course, the other thing about the lettering, you know, I could do a outline to that. Let's see. Yeah, the filter is overriding it. It does make me wonder, though. I haven't tried this. Layer styles. Yeah, the drop shadow is actually adding a little bit, even though you can't tell it, but you can see there's more details, so you can actually read it. One of the biggest problems I've always found with After Effects is you can get into these time sinks where it's like, that's cool, let's keep doing it. Yeah, cool, cool. You suddenly realize that you haven't met your deadline yet. So you gotta, you know, say, there's a point at which it goes, okay, that's enough. Move on, do the next section. Yeah, it's cleaner because I actually add an edge to it to make it stand out a little bit more, but these filters are still playing with it. So therefore it's still getting impact, but I've made a stronger edge. If I didn't have video like the mountains and clouds, it would look totally different again. It'd be much easier to read, but it wouldn't be as good, nice ghostly look to it. I mean, literally. Come back up here. No track matte. I've got solid stuff here again. So with the filter, that's what it looks like. However, if I were to go solid, choose that, hide the mountains because I don't want them. Track matte, alpha. So much fun, so many different things to do. I hope you can see why I love After Effects so much. It's just an amazing piece of software. And think that we're running this on home computers, my God, goodness gracious. You know, this used to be like all NBC would take weeks to do this, and we're doing it in a few minutes. It is just so much fun to play with. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what is the time? It's about 9:15. Okay, question time. I've shown you 3 different things tonight. Well, obviously we played back the Hollywood Bowl stuff, and I'll get to the ones that haven't been graded yet. I'll get to them. Actually, looking at my schedule, probably not until Wednesday or Thursday. Sorry. But we covered, obviously, the magnifying glass handout, which is just an extension upon the idea of doing, you know, how to do expressions and stuff, and a little bit more advanced. Again, I don't expect you to memorize that, and not everybody will ever use it, but you need to be aware that that option is there. As a matter of fact, there's a whole chapter on expressions in the book, which I normally don't assign because it just, you know, not everybody needs to know it. The other more important one that we were talking about, of course, is having fun with Shatter. You know, it's just too much fun. And to show you that there's so many bloody options under this thing, you can just have, you know, go nuts with it, create all sorts of explosions and stuff like that, and just have craziness of it. And then finally, just as a fast thing for the little bit of time left, we covered the concept of using the alpha channels to create a track mat. Okay. Again, if you have no alpha channel, you can use the black and white information from the Lumas to give you the same information. But the problem is, if you don't have a lot of black and white information, it don't show up the way you want it to. Because the text I knew had a strong alpha channel, that's why we did that here. And again, remember, you don't have to have all those crazy filters. I can turn off the filters. And if we put in some video here, we can just put video inside of lettering, which is the most basic thing of all. And that was how that one Hollywood Bowl one was done. The last one I showed you guys. It was just a simple track mat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we still have some time. So if you have questions for me about any of this stuff tonight or about anything else, this is a good time to ask it. I don't see anybody popping up either with their microphone or with chat. So just let me remind you, in 2 weeks, you've got your project number 4 due, which is the travel channel one. You should definitely be starting to work on that in the sense of collecting what you want. Know your destination, getting the illustrations and music together, and start having a rough idea what you want it to be. Okay, don't wait to the last moment on it. Like I said before, I'm going to be grading you a little bit harder every single time as we go through because you know more now. I can expect more from you. Okay. And then after we're done with that one, we go into the final project for the class, which will be the last thing that we'll be grading. Okay. So you think that was enough interesting stuff tonight? Are you starting to get a feel? You know, there's a point in this class where at this point where most people are starting going, wait, you can do all these neat things with the software. The light bulbs start coming up. Okay, well, I don't see a lot of responses going on here. Can the trip be fake? Sure, you can go to outer space in another dimension. I did show you a couple of those in the samples. I showed, you know, time traveling one. I showed dinosaurs and stuff last week. So you can go anywhere you want to. I've had people go to the Wizard of Oz. I've seen people do Star Wars. You know, but remember, the weirder the place you go, the sometimes the harder it is to find imagery to go with it. I've even had people turn in the Go to Hell one. So, you know, we'll see how that all goes. It's up to your creativity. Remember, it does not have to be all 3D. I just need one section of it with a camera move in it to show that it was 3D, okay? If you want to make the whole thing 3D, cool, go for it, have a good time. But it doesn't all have to be 3D. I just needed one example of 3D in the feature, okay? How do you customize magnification ratio? I'm not sure what you mean by ratio. That's way back here. Wrong tool. The filter, of course, is on the adjustment layer. And the magnifying ratio is basically, there's literally a thing called magnification option which allows you to increase or decrease how much it's getting bigger. Oh, that? How much can I zoom in, zoom out? Well, I tend to use my mouse wheel for that, but I can also just tell it to fit up to 100%. Because the whole screen can be reassigned, this is not always an even number. But I can go up to 200%, 1600%, if I really want to see the pixels, or fall back to like 1.5. That's not very handy. I tend to normally tell the thing to automatically fit to 100% when I can. Okay. But again, if you use your single mouse wheel, if you have a mouse wheel on your mouse, you can just use that to zoom in, zoom out as needed. Okay, does that help? Yeah. Again, the percentage will look weird depending upon, your monitor size and how you readjust everything. Can you set it to exactly a number? Yeah, because there's a pop-up. Haven't done that in a long time. I normally don't use it, but there is actually another screen you can pop up and type in the number you want. The thing is, you don't want this always to be a static thing. You often have to zoom in, make sure you line things up the way you want them, move things around, and adjust things accordingly. So, if you get too much of always trying to set this at the same size, you're going to probably miss things. Yeah, I can't. It's something I have not done in such a long time. I really don't. That's the two viewer. With that. Yeah, I don't remember where it is off the top of my head. Or they may have taken it out from the older ones. Okay, any other questions, anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay, well, it looks like, now I tell you what, I will stay on the line for a bit longer. If you guys have no questions, go ahead and log yourselves out. And I will stay on the line in case somebody wants to talk more privately with me, not in front of the entire class. Remember, you can also send me a chat directly that nobody else will see. So have a good evening, everybody. I'll see you next Monday. We'll do another filter set next week. Okay. So have a wonderful evening, what's left of it, and stay healthy, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.